Security, remove her before she contaminates this meeting. Grant Holloway's voice cracked across the glass and marble lobby of Holloway Systems at exactly 8:57 on a Monday morning. Conversations died mid-sentence. The soft hum of espresso machines and elevator doors suddenly felt too loud. Every face turned toward the woman standing near the executive elevators. Danielle Brooks did not move. She wore a tailored charcoal suit, low black heels, and carried a slim leather portfolio beneath one arm. No designer logos. No entourage. No raised voice. Just a calm expression that made Grant's anger look even smaller. Behind him, a wall-sized screen glowed with the Holloway Systems logo, bright blue against polished stone. In 3 minutes, the company's executive board was scheduled to meet upstairs. In 3 minutes, the future of the company would change hands. But Grant Holloway did not know that yet. He only saw a black woman standing where he believed she had no right to stand. "I said remove her," he repeated, louder this time. 2 security officers exchanged a look but did not move. They had seen Danielle arrive through the front doors alone. They had watched her show no panic when the receptionist questioned her name twice. They had watched her glance at the lobby clock as if she had somewhere far more important to be. Grant stepped closer, his expensive gray suit pulling tight across his shoulders. "This is a private executive floor," he said. "If you're here to drop off paperwork, leave it at reception. If you're here to make a scene, you picked the wrong building." Danielle's eyes lifted to his. Steady, unblinking. "I'm here for the 9 o'clock meeting," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it landed cleanly in the silence. Grant gave a short laugh. "The 9 o'clock meeting is not for walk-ins." At the reception desk, Maya Collins froze with one hand over her keyboard. 26 years old, sharp-eyed, newly hired in the legal department, she had seen a confidential calendar invite before sunrise. The attendee list had included a name she recognized from business journals, courtrooms, and one unforgettable keynote speech at Columbia Law. Danielle Brooks. But Maya said, "Nothing. Not yet." Grant was watching. "Ma'am," he said, turning back to Danielle with a smile that never reached his eyes. "You need to understand something. People don't just wander into a company like this because they own a suit and a folder." A few employees looked down. One man, near the coffee station, shifted his weight. Danielle adjusted her grip on the portfolio. "You're right," she said. "They don't." Grant's smile faded. "Then stop wasting everyone's time." He reached toward the portfolio, not quite touching it, but close enough to make the message clear. Danielle looked at his hand, then back at his face. "That file," she said, "decides who has authority here." For the first time, the lobby went completely still. Grant's jaw tightened. Maya's screen flickered with a new email marked urgent. Upstairs, the boardroom doors had just opened, and Danielle Brooks checked the clock once more. 2 minutes until 9. Grant Holloway stared at Danielle as if the sentence had changed the temperature in the room. His eyes dropped to the leather portfolio beneath her arm, then rose again with a sharper kind of irritation. "Authority," he said. "You have a lot of confidence for someone who has not even checked in." Danielle did not answer immediately. Beyond the tall windows, downtown Chicago was waking under a pale gray sky. Taxis slid through the morning traffic. A delivery truck idled at the curb. Inside Holloway Systems, every polished surface reflected the same scene. A powerful white chief executive officer trying to make a black woman disappear before anyone important noticed her. Danielle had seen versions of that scene before. Different buildings, different suits. Same assumption. Grant turned toward the reception desk. "Maya, did this woman sign in?" Maya Collins looked up from her monitor. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "She gave her name," Maya said carefully. "And she said she was here for the board meeting." Grant let out a dry laugh. Everyone says they are here for the board meeting when they want access to the executive floor. He leaned closer to the desk, lowering his voice only enough to make the insult feel deliberate. "Please tell me. We are not letting strangers walk through the front door and claim they belong in rooms they have not earned." Danielle watched Maya's face tighten. The young legal associate knew that look. The look of someone being asked to choose between truth and job security. Maya glanced at the screen again. The urgent email sat unopened in the corner of her inbox. The subject line read, "Acquisition Transition, Confidential." Danielle noticed it too, but she gave Maya no signal. No rescue. No pressure. Just time. "Mr. Holloway," Danielle said, Your meeting begins in less than 2 minutes. Do not tell me how to run my schedule, Grant snapped. His voice bounced off the marble walls. Several employees near the elevators stopped pretending not to listen. You came in here without an appointment, without credentials, and with some dramatic folder like you are in a courtroom. You are not. Danielle's expression did not change. No, she said. I am not. Grant stepped closer, his polished shoes stopping just a few feet from hers. Then tell me exactly why you are here. Danielle looked toward the executive elevators. Their silver doors were closed. Above them, the digital display changed from 8:58 to 8:59. I am here, she said, because decisions are being made this morning. Grant shook his head, almost amused. You have no idea what kind of decisions are being made. I know more than you think. That answer landed harder than the first. Grant's smile disappeared. Behind the reception desk, Maya finally opened the email. Her eyes moved across the first line, then the second. Her breath caught. The message confirmed that Holloway Systems had been acquired before sunrise by Brooks Capital Holdings. The new controlling owner would attend the 9 o'clock board meeting in person. Maya looked at Danielle again, really looked at her, and suddenly the quiet confidence made sense. The simple suit made sense. The portfolio made sense. Grant, however, saw none of it. He only saw a woman who refused to shrink when he expected her to. He pointed toward the revolving doors. You have 30 seconds to leave this lobby. Danielle checked the clock. That will not be necessary, she said. The elevator display chimed. 9 o'clock had arrived. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and the lobby seemed to hold its breath. 3 people stepped out first: Harold Vance, the chief financial officer, Elena Ruiz, chair of the board, and a woman in a cream blazer carrying a tablet against her chest. They had the focused, hurried look of people arriving for a meeting that could change a company before lunch. Grant Holloway straightened his tie at once. The anger on his face rearranged itself into polished confidence. Elena, he said, moving toward her with an easy smile. Good morning. We have a minor disruption down here. Elena's gaze moved past him and landed on Danielle. For half a second, something almost like recognition crossed her face. Then Grant stepped into her line of sight. This woman has been attempting to access the executive floor, he continued. She claims she is part of the board meeting, but she has not presented credentials, and she has been creating confusion for my staff. Danielle stood still beside the reception desk. She did not rush to explain. She did not interrupt him. The silence gave Grant room to keep talking, and he took every inch of it. I have asked her several times to leave, he said. I think it would be best if security escorted her outside before we begin. Maya Collins felt her stomach tighten. The acquisition email remained open on her screen. The words controlling owner seemed to burn brighter with every second. She wanted to speak. She wanted to say that Danielle Brooks was not an intruder, not a disruption, not a stranger. But Grant had made fear feel like company policy. The security officers stood near the lobby entrance, uncertain now. They had heard Grant's command, but they had also seen the board chair looking at Danielle with a careful, unreadable expression. Elena finally spoke. Grant, she said, what exactly did you say to her? Grant blinked. I said she could not enter a restricted area without authorization. And before that? Elena asked. The question was quiet, but it cut through the room. Grant looked toward Danielle, then toward the employees watching from a distance. I said, she was not supposed to be here. Danielle lowered her eyes for one brief moment. Not in defeat. In memory. At 24, she had stood in the lobby of a downtown law firm after winning a scholarship no one in her neighborhood thought possible. A senior partner had looked at her resume, then looked at her face and asked whether she was there to deliver documents. She had been wearing a navy suit then too. She had answered with the same calm she carried now. No, sir. I am here to argue the case. That day had taught her something no textbook could explain. Some people would question your place in the room before they questioned their own assumptions. Danielle looked back at Grant. You said more than that, she told him. Grant's expression hardened. I said what any responsible executive would say when someone refuses to identify themselves. Maya pushed back from her desk. Her chair rolled softly across the floor. She did identify herself, Maya said. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She gave me her name when she arrived. Grant turned sharply. Maya, this does not concern you. It concerns the company, Maya replied. The words surprised even her. Elena's eyes shifted to the young associate, then to Danielle. The woman in the cream blazer tapped her tablet twice. A new notification appeared on the lobby screen behind them. The blue Holloway Systems logo vanished. In its place, white letters appeared against a dark background. Ownership transition complete. Grant turned slowly toward the screen. His smile disappeared. Danielle adjusted the portfolio beneath her arm and took one measured step toward the elevators. Now, she said, we can begin. Grant Holloway stared at the screen as though the words might rearrange themselves if he waited long enough. Ownership transition complete. The message remained bright and unmistakable above the lobby, reflected in the glass walls, the marble floor, and the stunned faces of the employees who had watched him try to send Danielle Brooks away. What is this? Grant asked. His voice had lost its sharp edge. He looked at Harold Vance, then Elena Ruiz, then the woman in the cream blazer. Why is that on the lobby screen? Harold did not answer immediately. He opened a leather folder and removed a single document. The transaction closed at 6:42 this morning, he said. Brooks Capital Holdings acquired the controlling interest in Holloway Systems. Grant's eyes moved toward Danielle. This time, he did not look at her clothes. He did not look at her portfolio. He looked at her name as if he had never heard it before. Danielle stepped toward the elevators, then stopped beside the reception desk. Her voice remained calm. My firm completed the acquisition, she said. I led the legal review, negotiated the final terms, and signed the closing documents before sunrise. Grant swallowed hard. You are Brooks Capital? Danielle met his eyes. I am Danielle Brooks. The lobby fell silent again, but it was a different silence now. Not the silence of people afraid to speak. The silence of people watching the truth arrive exactly on time. Grant forced a laugh that sounded thin and unfamiliar. This is a misunderstanding. We were dealing with a security concern. Maya Collins looked at him from behind the desk. The fear in her face had changed. It had not disappeared, but something stronger had risen beside it. She gave her name, Maya said. You did not ask for identification. You decided she did not belong here before you knew who she was. Grant turned toward her. Maya, be careful. Elena Ruiz stepped forward. No, she said. She should be honest. Her words landed with the authority Grant had spent years trying to imitate. The security officers moved back from the lobby entrance. No one told them to. They simply understood that the order had changed. Danielle set her portfolio on the reception counter and opened it. Inside were signed agreements, transition notices, and a board resolution stamped with the company seal. She placed the final page in front of Grant. Effective immediately, she said, the board has suspended your executive authority pending a review of leadership conduct and workplace culture. Grant's face drained of color. You cannot do that based on one conversation. Not based on one conversation, Danielle replied. Based on what this conversation revealed. Harold Vance looked down at the floor. The woman in the cream blazer, Naomi Price, tapped her tablet again. The boardroom is ready, she said. The directors are waiting for Ms. Brooks. Grant looked toward Elena, desperate now for an ally. Elena, you know me. You know what I have built. Elena's expression did not soften. A company is not only what it earns, she said. It is how people are treated when they walk through the door. Danielle closed the portfolio and picked it up. She turned to Maya, who was still standing behind the desk. Ms. Collins, Danielle said, please join us upstairs. I would like you to document everything that happened this morning. Maya nodded slowly. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was clear. Yes, Ms. Brooks. Grant stepped forward as if he wanted to stop them, then caught himself. The elevator doors opened again. Danielle entered first. Elena followed. Maya took one final look at Grant before stepping inside. As the doors began to close, Danielle faced him one last time. You did not make a mistake because you did not know who I was, she said. You made a mistake because you believed respect had to be earned from you. Then the doors closed, leaving Grant alone beneath the screen that announced the future he no longer controlled. The elevator rose in complete silence. 42 floors of glass, steel, and buried history passed behind the doors, but Danielle Brooks kept her eyes forward. Maya Collins stood beside her with a legal pad pressed against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Elena Ruiz watched the floor numbers climb, her expression firm but troubled. Naomi Price reviewed messages on her tablet with the speed of someone who had spent years making certain that powerful people could not hide behind confusion. When the doors opened on the executive floor, the boardroom was already waiting. 12 directors sat around a long walnut table beneath a wall of windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Coffee cups had gone untouched. Screens displayed the acquisition documents, financial projections, and the official notice of transfer. At the head of the table, an empty chair waited. Danielle walked toward it, then paused. "Before we begin," she said, "there is an incident from the lobby that belongs in the record." The room shifted. A few directors looked at Elena. Others looked at Naomi. Maya stood near the doorway, uncertain whether she belonged among people whose names appeared in annual reports. Danielle turned to her. "Please come in, Maya." Maya took a breath and entered. Her shoes made a small sound against the hardwood floor. It felt louder than it should have. "Tell them what you saw," Danielle said. Maya looked at the directors, then at the empty chair where Grant Holloway normally sat. For a moment, she remembered her first week at Holloway Systems. She had arrived early every day, stayed late every night, and learned quickly which people could be questioned and which people could not. Grant had been one of the untouchable ones. His name ended conversations. His approval opened doors. His anger made people lower their voices. But this morning, she had watched that power turn into something ugly. "Ms. Brooks came into the lobby before 9, Maya began. "She gave me her name. She said she was there for the board meeting." Mr. Holloway did not ask her for identification. He assumed she did not belong on the executive floor. He told security to remove her. Her voice trembled once, then held. He said she was creating a disruption. But she was calm the entire time. No one spoke. Danielle did not look pleased. She looked disappointed, and somehow that carried more weight. Naomi placed her tablet on the table. "The lobby security system captured audio and video from the full interaction," she said. "The recordings have been preserved. Human Resources and outside counsel have been notified." A director named Thomas Reed folded his hands. "Grant has led this company for 11 years, he said carefully. "We should make sure we understand the full context." Danielle looked at him. "Context matters," she said. "That is why we will review every word. But I want to be clear about one thing. This is not only about how he treated me." She turned toward the city beyond the windows. "It is about how many people have walked into that lobby without a portfolio, without a board meeting, without the power to make this company listen. It is about what happens when bias is mistaken for judgment." Elena nodded once. "The review will begin today," she said. Grant Holloway remained suspended from all executive duties. Maya lowered her eyes, overwhelmed by the moment. Danielle noticed. "Maya," she said, "you spoke when it was difficult. That matters here." Maya looked up. "I almost did not," she admitted. Danielle's face softened, just slightly. "But you did." Then Danielle took the chair at the head of the table. The room waited. She opened the acquisition file, placed both hands on its pages, and began the meeting that would decide what Holloway Systems became next. The meeting had barely begun when the executive floor doors opened again. Grant Holloway walked in without his jacket, his tie loosened, his face set in the kind of anger that tried to look like certainty. Behind him came Victor Lane, the company's general counsel, carrying a thick binder and wearing the careful expression of a man who had just learned the ground beneath him was unstable. Every director turned. Danielle remained seated at the head of the table. "You are not authorized to be here," Elena Ruiz said. Grant ignored her. "I am still the chief executive officer of this company," he replied. "And I am not going to stand outside while a hostile buyer walks in and turns one awkward exchange into a corporate takeover." Danielle closed the acquisition file slowly. "The purchase was not hostile," she said. "Your board approved the transaction. Your shareholders approved the transaction. Your legal team reviewed every page." Grant looked at Victor. "Tell them." Victor did not meet his eyes. "The transaction is valid," he said. "It closed this morning." Grant's jaw tightened. "Then this is personal." Danielle's expression did not change. "No. It became personal when you decided my presence was a problem before you knew my name." The room went quiet. Grant moved toward the table, stopping near the chair he had occupied for 11 years. "I made a judgment call in the lobby," he said. "That is what leaders do. We protect the company." "From whom?" Danielle asked. Her voice was soft, but every person in the room heard it. "From a woman carrying legal documents? From someone who arrived on time for a scheduled board meeting? Or from the possibility that your assumptions were wrong? Grant looked around the table for support. No one offered it. The city stretched below the windows, bright now beneath the late morning sun. Thousands of people moved through Chicago streets without knowing that one company's future was being decided 42 floors above them. Danielle had spent years in rooms like this one. Rooms where her expertise was welcomed only after someone else repeated it. Rooms where she had been mistaken for staff, asked to fetch files, asked whether she was waiting for her supervisor. She had learned not to carry every insult like a wound. Some she carried like evidence. "Mr. Holloway," Danielle said, "you told security to remove me. You spoke to me as if I had to prove I deserved to stand in a public lobby. You did not ask a question. You made a conclusion." Grant's voice rose. "I did not know who you were." Danielle looked directly at him. "That is exactly the point." The words landed with the force of a door closing. Naomi Price tapped her tablet. A screen at the far end of the boardroom lit up with a list of employee reports. Anonymous workplace concerns. Exit interviews. Complaints that had been marked resolved without meaningful review. Several mentioned a culture of exclusion on the executive floor. Several described employees being dismissed because they did not fit the image Grant believed the company should project. Elena read the screen in silence. Thomas Reed leaned back in his chair, his face pale. "How long has this been sitting in our system?" he asked. Naomi answered without looking away from the data. "Some reports are more than 3 years old." Grant turned toward Victor. "You knew about these?" Victor spoke carefully. "I knew there were concerns. I did not know they had been handled this way." Danielle stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "This company will not move forward by pretending this morning was an isolated moment," she said. "It will move forward by deciding that dignity is not a privilege reserved for people you recognize." Grant looked at the empty chair beside him, then at the directors who would no longer look away. For the first time that morning, he had nothing left to say. Grant Holloway stood beside the conference table, surrounded by the evidence of a culture he had insisted did not exist. The screen behind him showed report after report, each one reduced to a line of text, a date, a department, and a conclusion that had once been buried beneath routine language. Resolved. Closed. No further action required. But nothing about the room felt resolved now. Danielle Brooks looked across the table at the directors. "I want every complaint reviewed by an independent firm," she said. "Not a summary. Not a selective report. Every complaint." Thomas Reed nodded slowly. "That will take time." "Then we will give it time," Danielle replied. "What we will not give it is another excuse." Grant finally found his voice. "You are turning this company upside down over perception." Maya Collins stood near the wall with her legal pad, her eyes moving from Grant to Danielle. The word perception hung in the air. It was the kind of word people used when they wanted to make harm sound imaginary. Danielle turned toward him. "Perception is what you called it when people said they were excluded," she said. "This morning, you called it security. Before that, you called it judgment. The label changed. The behavior did not." Grant shook his head. "You are making me into something I am not." "No," Danielle said. "I am asking you to account for what you did." Naomi Price slid a new document across the table toward Elena Ruiz. "There is another matter," she said. "At 8:47 this morning, Mr. Holloway sent an internal message to the executive team. He instructed staff not to disclose the acquisition transition until he had spoken with the board privately." Grant's face tightened. "That was a standard communication." Naomi continued. "The message also directed the reception team to limit access to the executive floor for anyone who did not fit the expected profile of the morning meeting." The room went still. "Victor." Lane reached for the document, read it once, then read it again. "Grant," he said quietly, "what did you mean by expected profile?" Grant looked toward the windows. He did not answer. Maya felt a chill move through her. She remembered the receptionist asking Danielle if she was there to drop off paperwork. She remembered how quickly the question had become an accusation. It had not been random. It had been built into the morning before Danielle ever walked through the door. Elena placed both hands on the table. "This changes the review," she said. "It suggests intent." Grant turned sharply. "You cannot suspend me over an email." Danielle's voice remained even. "You were suspended because the board has a duty to protect employees, clients, and the company itself. The email tells us where to look next." Grant stared at her. You planned this. Danielle held his gaze. I planned to attend a board meeting. You planned to decide who belonged before you knew who they were. The difference between them filled the room. Outside, a boat moved slowly across the lake, leaving a white line behind it that vanished almost as soon as it appeared. Inside, nothing was vanishing. Not the reports. Not the recording. Not the words Grant had spoken in the lobby. Thomas Reed cleared his throat. What happens now? Danielle looked at Maya. First, we protect anyone who comes forward. Then she looked at Naomi. Second, we preserve every record. Finally, she faced Grant. And third, we stop pretending leadership is about having the loudest voice in the room. Grant's shoulders lowered. Not an acceptance. In the first unmistakable sign that the authority he had relied on was no longer his to command. Elena rose from her chair. Mr. Holloway, you will return your company access badge and corporate devices to council. You may submit a written response through your attorney. Grant looked at the directors one by one. No one moved to defend him. When he finally turned toward the door, Maya stepped aside to let him pass. He did not look at her. Danielle did. You did the right thing, Danielle said. Maya held her legal pad tighter. I was scared. Danielle nodded. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing not to let fear make the decision for you. The boardroom door closed behind Grant Holloway, and the sound was small. It should have been nothing more than a latch settling into place. But after the morning he had created, it felt like the end of an era built on people staying quiet. No one spoke for several seconds. The directors sat beneath the bright windows, surrounded by documents, unanswered questions, and the uncomfortable realization that they had allowed warning signs to become background noise. Danielle Brooks remained at the head of the table, one hand resting on the acquisition file. She had not come to Holloway Systems looking for a public confrontation. She had come to finalize a transition, meet the board, and begin rebuilding a company with real potential. But the lobby had shown her exactly what needed rebuilding first. We have work to do, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried through the room with certainty. Naomi Price opened a folder marked immediate actions. The employee reporting line is now being transferred to an outside firm, she said. No reports will be routed through the executive office. Employees will have confidential access to legal support, human resources, and independent investigators. Elena Ruiz nodded. Send a company-wide message before noon. Thomas Reed looked uneasy. Should we wait until we have more information? Danielle turned toward him. People have waited long enough. The answer was not angry. It did not need to be. Maya Collins stood near the side table, still holding her legal pad. She had expected to take notes and disappear. Instead, she had watched a company change direction in less than an hour. Danielle noticed her watching. Maya, she said, what did you see in that lobby besides what happened to me? Maya hesitated. Every director looked toward her. The room was too large, the table too polished, the faces too important. But she remembered Danielle standing alone while Grant tried to make her feel small. She remembered the security officers waiting for an order that should never have been given. She remembered how easy it would have been for everyone to say, nothing. I saw people who were uncomfortable, Maya said. But they were afraid to speak because they thought he had the final word. Danielle nodded. That is how cultures like this survive. Not because everyone agrees with the worst behavior. Because too many people believe they cannot challenge it. Naomi's tablet chimed. She read the message, then looked up. The lobby team has requested permission to submit statements. So have 3 employees from the executive office. Elena exhaled slowly. Already. They have been waiting for a safe moment, Danielle said. Outside the boardroom, the executive floor was changing too. The assistants who had watched Grant pass through every morning with unquestioned authority now spoke in low voices near the copy room. The reception team gathered around Maya's empty desk downstairs, reading the transition notice on the lobby screen. Some were shocked. Some were relieved. Some were realizing that the woman they had watched being dismissed had been the only person in the building with enough power to make the truth impossible to ignore. Danielle rose from her chair and walked to the window. Chicago spread beneath her in sharp lines of sunlight and shadow. She thought of every time she had entered a room prepared twice as hard, because she knew someone might assume she did not belong. She thought of the younger version of herself, standing in a law firm lobby with a resume in her hand and a future no one else could see. She had not become powerful to prove that she deserved respect. She had become powerful because she understood what happened when people without power were denied it. She turned back to the board. "We are not going to make this company better with a statement full of polished words," she said. "We are going to make it better by changing who gets heard, who gets protected, and who gets believed." Maya looked at her, and something inside her settled. The fear was still there, but it no longer owned the room. Danielle picked up the acquisition file. "Bring in the first employee who wants to speak," she said. "This time we listen." The first employee to enter was not a senior vice president or a department head. It was Rosa Martinez from Facilities, a woman in her late 50s who had worked at Holloway Systems for 14 years. She stood just inside the boardroom doorway with both hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee. Her uniform was neat. Her posture was careful. She looked at the long table as if it belonged to another world. Danielle Brooks stood and walked around the table to meet her. "Thank you for coming," Danielle said. Rosa nodded, but her eyes stayed on the floor. "I was not sure I should," she admitted. "I have seen people speak up before." The words did not need explanation. Everyone in the room understood them. Danielle pulled out a chair beside her own. "You do not have to say anything you are not ready to say," she told Rosa. "But no one will punish you for telling the truth here." Rosa sat slowly. Naomi Price placed a small recorder on the table and explained that the conversation would be documented only with Rosa's permission. Rosa looked at it for a long moment, then nodded. "Last winter," she began, "Mr. Holloway came through the executive floor with guests. One of the guests left a coffee cup on the conference table. Mr. Holloway looked at me and said, 'Make sure the help clears this before anyone important arrives.'" The room tightened. Thomas Reed looked down. Elena Ruiz closed her eyes briefly. Rosa continued, her voice quiet but steady. "I have worked in this building since before he became chief executive officer. I know every floor. I know which elevators stop when the power goes out. I know the names of people who never learn mine. But that day, I felt like I was invisible." Danielle listened without interrupting. She knew that kind of invisibility. It was not always loud. Sometimes it came in a glance, a joke, a phrase spoken as if dignity were something only certain people were allowed to carry. "Did you report it?" Danielle asked. Rosa gave a small, tired smile. "My supervisor told me not to take it personally. He said Mr. Holloway had a stressful day." Naomi wrote something down. "Do you remember the supervisor's name?" Rosa nodded. "Yes, I remember all of it." One by one, more employees arrived. A black software engineer described being passed over for a client presentation after a manager said the team needed a more traditional face. A white administrative assistant admitted she had watched colleagues make jokes about names and accents because she was afraid that objecting would make her a target. A young Asian American analyst explained that he had been asked 3 times in 1 week whether he was part of the information technology support team, even though he worked in corporate strategy. Their stories were different, but the pattern was the same. People had been told, directly or indirectly, that belonging came with conditions. Danielle sat among them, not above them. The new owner of the company listened to every word. By late morning, the sunlight had shifted across the boardroom table. The city below kept moving. Traffic lights changed. Trains crossed bridges. People hurried toward meetings that might matter or might not. But inside Holloway Systems, something had stopped moving the way it always had. The silence was no longer protecting the people who caused harm. It was making room for the people who had carried it. Maya Collins sat beside Naomi, taking notes with a steadier hand now. When Rosa finished, Danielle thanked her again. Rosa looked at Danielle for a long moment. "Are things really going to change?" she asked. Danielle did not offer a quick promise. She did not give her a polished answer designed for a company email. "Change begins when people stop being asked to carry the cost of someone else's prejudice," she said. "Today, we begin carrying that cost where it belongs." Rosa nodded, and for the first time that morning, her shoulders eased. Outside the boardroom, an urgent message appeared on every company screen. The chief executive officer had been suspended. An independent review had begun, and the company had a new owner who had arrived without an announcement, only to make sure that every voice in the building finally had won. By noon, the boardroom had become the most honest room in Holloway Systems. The coffee had gone cold. The city beyond the windows had turned bright and clear. Yet no one rushed to leave. Every story added another thread to the picture Danielle Brooks had seen in the lobby before the clock struck 9. It was never just one comment. Never just one manager having a bad morning. It was a system of small permissions, repeated often enough that people began to mistake it for normal. Naomi Price's tablet vibrated again. She read the message, then looked toward Danielle. "The outside investigators have arrived," she said. "They are setting up on the 39th floor. Human Resources has also confirmed that Grant Holloway's access has been fully suspended across every company system." Thomas Reed shifted in his chair. "What about his office?" Danielle looked at Elena Ruiz. Elena answered first. "It will be secured for the review. No documents will be removed. No employee will be questioned by him or anyone acting on his behalf." The directors nodded, one after another. The decision had the weight of finality. Downstairs, the news traveled faster than any formal announcement. Employees gathered in quiet clusters near break rooms, elevators, and open workstations. Some stared at their phones. Some reread the company-wide message. Others looked toward the executive floor as if they expected the old order to return at any moment. But it did not. Grant Holloway was no longer walking the halls with his quick steps and clipped instructions. His name no longer made people lower their voices. In the boardroom, Danielle opened a second folder. It contained the first 90-day plan for the company. Revenue forecasts, client strategy, hiring targets, technology investments. The kind of material that usually defined a new owner's first day. She placed it aside. "The business plan can wait until tomorrow," she said. "Today, the people come first." Victor Lane, still pale from the morning, looked up. "What are you proposing?" Danielle spoke with the same precision she had brought to every negotiation that built Brooks Capital Holdings. An independent review of leadership decisions, mandatory reporting protections, clear promotion standards, a direct employee council that reports to the board, not only to executives, and a review of every complaint closed without investigation in the last 5 years. Thomas exhaled. "That will be expensive." Danielle met his eyes. "So is losing good people because they believe silence is the price of a paycheck." No one challenged her after that. Maya Collins sat beside Rosa Martinez, who had stayed to help identify departments where employees might need support. Maya had spent months believing that success meant learning how to stay unnoticed. Now she watched Danielle make space for people who had been ignored for years, and she understood something new. A company could be powerful without being cruel. A leader could be calm without being distant. And courage did not always arrive with a title. Sometimes it began with one sentence spoken when everyone else was afraid. The boardroom doors opened. A receptionist stepped inside, her face nervous. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "Mr. Holloway is downstairs. He is asking to speak with you before he leaves." The room went quiet. Danielle did not look surprised. She closed the folder in front of her and stood. "Tell him I will meet him in the lobby," she said. Elena rose halfway from her chair. "You do not have to." Danielle gave her a small, steady look. "I know." Then she picked up her portfolio, the same one Grant had dismissed that morning, and walked toward the elevators. This time, no one questioned where she belonged. The elevator descended from the 42nd floor in a smooth, quiet line. Danielle Brooks stood alone inside it, her portfolio resting against her side. The mirrored walls reflected her from every angle, but she did not look at herself. She looked at the floor numbers falling one by one. 40, 37, 32. Each number carried her closer to the place where Grant Holloway had tried to decide her worth before learning her name. By the time the doors opened into the lobby, the building had changed. The same marble floor gleamed beneath the afternoon light. The same reception desk stood beneath the company logo. But the atmosphere was different now. Employees were not pretending to work while they listened. They were standing openly in small groups, watching with the quiet attention of people who understood that something important was still unfinished. Grant waited near the revolving doors. His suit jacket was folded over one arm. His corporate badge was gone. Without it, he looked less like the man who had ruled the building for 11 years and more like someone who had finally run out of places to hide. When he saw Danielle, he took one step forward. "Thank you for coming down," he said. Danielle stopped several feet away. "You asked to speak with me." Grant looked around at the employees, then lowered his voice. "Not here." Danielle's eyes moved across the lobby. Maya Collins stood behind the reception desk. Rosa Martinez was near the elevators with 2 members of the facilities team. The security officers who had hesitated that morning stood by the entrance, their posture respectful and still. "You spoke to me here," Danielle said. "You made your decision about me here." Grant's face tightened. I know I handled it badly. Danielle said nothing. He continued because silence had become the only space left for his honesty. I was under pressure. The acquisition was happening. The board was keeping information from me. I thought someone was trying to disrupt the meeting. Danielle held his gaze. You did not think I was a disruption because of a document in my hand. You thought I was a disruption because of what you saw when you looked at me. Grant opened his mouth, then stopped. The lobby was so quiet that the soft rush of traffic outside could be heard through the glass. I did not mean it that way, he said at last. Danielle's expression remained steady. Intent does not erase impact. The words settled over him. They were not cruel. They were simply true. Grant looked toward the reception desk, where Maya stood with her hands folded in front of her. I did not know there were so many complaints, he said. You were the chief executive officer, Danielle replied. You did not have to know every complaint. But you had a responsibility to build a place where people could bring them forward without fear. His shoulders dropped. What happens to me now? Danielle glanced at the company screen above the lobby. The message about the independent review remained visible. The review will determine that, she said. You will have the same opportunity every employee deserves. You will be heard. The facts will be considered. And no one will decide your future based on what you look like when you walk through a door. Grant looked at her then, really looked at her, and the meaning of the morning finally reached him. Danielle had the power to humiliate him in the same place he had tried to humiliate her. She could have raised her voice. She could have made him smaller in front of everyone. Instead, she gave him what he had denied her, dignity. I am sorry, Grant said. The apology was quiet. It was not enough to repair the harm, but it was the first sentence he had spoken all day without trying to protect himself. Danielle nodded once. Then let the next thing you do be different from the last. Grant stood still for a moment, then turned toward the revolving doors. No security officer touched him. No one rushed him. He walked out on his own, beneath the eyes of the people he had once expected to stay silent. Danielle remained in the lobby, her portfolio in hand, while the building around her began to understand that power was not proven by who you could push aside. It was proven by what you chose to change when you finally had the chance. For a long moment after Grant Holloway disappeared through the revolving doors, no one in the lobby moved. The afternoon sun poured through the glass front of Holloway Systems, laying bright rectangles across the marble floor. Danielle Brooks stood beneath the company screen, still holding the portfolio that had been treated like a threat only hours earlier. Maya Collins stepped from behind the reception desk. She looked younger than she had that morning, not because anything about her had changed, but because she was no longer trying to make herself invisible. Ms. Brooks, Maya said, there are people asking if they can speak with you. Danielle turned toward the lobby. Employees had begun to gather in a loose circle. Rosa Martinez stood near the elevators. The black software engineer from the boardroom was beside her. The young analyst from corporate strategy stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching carefully. Even the two security officers remained nearby, their faces serious. Danielle looked at all of them and understood that the day had not ended when Grant left. His departure was only the first answer. The larger question was what came next. We will meet tomorrow morning, Danielle said. Not only executives. Everyone who wants to be heard. Rosa stepped forward. Will it really be different now? Danielle did not answer quickly. She had spent enough years in law and business to know that trust could not be rebuilt with a single speech. It had to be rebuilt through decisions, through policies, through what happened when no one important was watching. It will be different if we make it different, she said. That means accountability. It means clear standards. It means no one has to become powerful before they are treated with respect. The security officer closest to the door, a man named Daniel Price, lowered his eyes. Ms. Brooks, he said, I should have spoken up this morning. Danielle faced him. What will you do next time? Daniel looked toward Maya, then toward Rosa. I will ask questions before I make assumptions, he said. And I will not follow an order that treats someone unfairly. Danielle nodded. Then start there. The words moved quietly through the lobby. No applause came. No dramatic celebration. Just something more lasting. People listening. Naomi Price arrived from the elevators with her tablet in hand. The employee message is ready, she said. It explains the review, the reporting protections, and tomorrow's open forum. Danielle looked at the screen. Add one more line. Naomi waited. Danielle spoke slowly. Every person who enters this building deserves to be treated with dignity before they are asked to prove anything. Naomi typed the sentence exactly as Danielle said it. Above them, the company screen changed again. The old announcement faded. A new message appeared for every employee, client, and visitor to see. Holloway Systems was beginning an independent review and a company-wide culture reset. The words were simple. The work behind them would not be. Maya watched the message appear, then looked at Danielle. "Why did you come alone?" "This morning," she asked. Danielle's gaze rested on the front doors. "Because numbers can tell you what a company earns," she said. "But only people can tell you what it has become." Maya absorbed that in silence. Outside, Chicago moved toward evening. Cars filled the streets. Office lights flickered on in towers across the city. Inside Holloway Systems, the employees slowly returned to their desks, but they did not return as the same people who had arrived that morning. They had watched power change hands. More importantly, they had watched power choose responsibility over revenge. Danielle turned toward the elevators. Tomorrow would bring investigations, meetings, difficult truths, and decisions that would test every promise made today. But she had not come to this company to preserve its old image. She had come to build something worthy of the people inside it. And as the elevator doors opened, Danielle stepped forward without hesitation, carrying no need to prove she belonged. The next morning, the lobby of Holloway Systems looked almost the same. Marble floors, glass walls, the soft glow of the company name above the reception desk. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. At 9 o'clock, employees began arriving for the open forum Danielle Brooks had promised. They came from every floor. Engineers with laptops tucked beneath their arms. Administrative assistants carrying coffee. Facilities staff in clean uniforms. Analysts, receptionists, managers, and interns. Some came because they had something to say. Others came because they needed to see whether yesterday had been real. Danielle stood near the front of the lobby beside a simple podium that had been brought down from the executive floor. There were no cameras, no banners, no dramatic music. Only chairs arranged in rows and a room full of people who had spent too long wondering whether their voices mattered. Maya Collins stood nearby with Naomi Price and the independent investigators. Rosa Martinez sat in the front row. When the room settled, Danielle looked around slowly. She saw uncertainty. She saw hope. She saw the familiar caution of people who had learned that speaking honestly could cost them more than silence. "Yesterday," Danielle began, "I walked into this building and was told I did not belong." Her voice was clear, steady, and impossible to ignore. That moment was not important because of who I am. It was important because it revealed what could happen to anyone who walks through these doors without power, without a title, or without someone willing to speak for them. The lobby remained silent. Danielle continued, "I did not buy this company to win an argument. I bought it because I believe businesses have a responsibility beyond profit. They shape people's days. They shape careers. They shape whether someone goes home believing they were seen or dismissed." She paused, letting the words settle. No one in this building should have to prove their humanity before they receive basic respect. Rosa looked down, pressing her hands together. Maya watched Danielle with tears gathering in her eyes, not from sadness alone, but from the relief of hearing someone say plainly what so many people had carried in silence. Danielle stepped away from the podium. "The investigation will continue," she said. "The policies will change. Leadership will be held accountable. But policy is only paper if the people in this room do not protect one another when it matters." A man near the back raised his hand. He was one of the security officers from the previous day. "What if someone is afraid to speak?" he asked. Danielle nodded. "Then listen when they cannot speak loudly. Ask what happened. Do not rush to defend the person with the most authority. Look for the truth." The room shifted. A few people nodded. Others looked at one another with the quiet recognition that they had all been waiting for permission to be better. Naomi stepped forward and announced the new employee council, the confidential reporting system, and the independent review process. Maya would serve as the first legal liaison for employees who needed support. When Maya heard her name, she looked stunned. Danielle smiled at her. "You earned that trust," she said. The applause began softly. It was not the applause of a crowd watching a spectacle. It was the sound of people recognizing a door had opened. Danielle looked toward the revolving doors where Grant Holloway had left the day before. Then she turned back to the employees. "A title can give someone authority," she said. But character decides whether they deserve it. The words stayed in the lobby long after she stepped away from the podium. Outside, Chicago moved forward beneath a bright morning sky. Inside, Holloway Systems did too. Not because one woman had proven she belonged, but because she had made it harder for anyone else to be told that they did not.